During the Cretaceous, Tyrannosaurids dominated the northern hemisphere. And by far, the largest among them was the mighty T-Rex. Tyrannosaurus rex was by far one of the largest terrestrial predators to ever live. Unmatched in size and power, it was the undisputed king of the dinosaurs. But millions of years before Tyrannosaurus rex reigned over North America, another monster tyrannosaur ruled over the continent. While not as large as the more famous T-Rex, it was still the dominant apex predator of its age. Preying on most anything in its ecosystem, this tyrannosaur was on the top of its food chain. What was this proto-T-Rex? How did it become the ruling tyrant of its continent? And why did it eventually go extinct? This is the story of Daspletosaurus, the tyrant before T-Rex. The story of this impressive predator begins over a century ago in the year 1921 when a partial skeleton consisting of a skull and other postcranial elements were discovered near Steveville in Alberta, Canada by the legendary American-Canadian paleontologist Charles Mortimer Sternberg. The remains specifically come from the Campanian-aged Old Man Formation of the Judith River Group. Sternberg initially believed that the fossil material came from a new species of dinosaur taxon, Gorgosaurus. Gorgosaurus was one of the newly described clade dinosaurs known as tyrannosaurs. Named for the famous Tyrannosaurus rex, the king of the dinosaurs, these animals were the apex predators of the northern hemisphere during the end of the age of the dinosaurs. Nearly 50 years later, this specimen, catalogued as CMN 8506, was designated as the holotype for the new genus of Tyrannosaurid by American-Canadian paleontologist Dale Russell in 1970. The specific name would come from the Latin word taurosis, meaning muscular or brawny, while the genus name would come from the combined Greek roots dasples, meaning frightful, and sauros, meaning lizard or reptile. Combined, Russell would give us the full name of this new animal as Daspletosaurus taurosis, meaning muscular or brawny frightful reptile. Along with the naming of the holotype, Russell also designated a second specimen, AMNH 5438, as the paratype. Found in the Dinosaur Park Formation by American paleontologist Barnum Brown in 1913, it has since no longer been considered as the paratype anymore due to how fragmented it is in comparison to the holotype. Over the past 50 years, several other different specimens for the genus have also been discovered and described. Some of these specimens include RTMP 2001.36.1, an almost complete skeleton discovered in 2001, Sir William, a specimen discovered between 2002 and 2004 by Tribold Inc. that may or may not be from a new species or genus due to unique characteristics, and many more, like the 80% complete Daspletosaurus specimen nicknamed Pete 3, a specimen discovered in 2005 that was later described as recently as 2025. Some of these tyrannosaurid fossils also helped lead to the description of new tyrannosaur genera, like New Mexico's Bistachiversor. In the years since, multiple new species have also been described. In 1992, American paleontologist Jack Horner and his colleagues reported the discovery of new tyrannosaur remains from the Campanian-aged Two Medicine Formation in the state of Montana. Initially, it was believed to be an intermediate transitional species between Daspletosaurus and T-Rex, but paleontologist Philip J. Curry stated that it may be from an unnamed species of Daspletosaurus, and that is exactly what it turned out to be after a multitude of other specimens were recovered in a Two Medicine bone bed, which were excavated in 2001 and 2005. Over 10 years later, in 2017, paleontologist Thomas Carr described and assigned these specimens to a new species, named Daspletosaurus horneri, with the specific name honoring its discoverer. Its description marks the first official new species for the genus to be named in nearly 50 years. This species is known by a total of 5 different specimens, all of which died in different growth stages and are mostly known by relatively complete or fragmented skull material and other postcranial elements. The holotype specimen, MOR 590, not only preserves a great deal of the skull, but also patches of skin around its maxilla, which, at the time of the publication, added even more evidence and data to the debate around whether or not theropod dinosaurs had preliminary lips like lizards or exposed teeth like crocodilians. In the same year dehornery was described, another new partial skeleton of the genus was discovered by a former MSU student, Jack Wilson, at the Jack's B2 site in the Judith River Formation. The specimen, known by a disarticulated skeleton, was cataloged as BDM 107 and was described as a third official species of the genus by paleontologists Elias A. Warshaw and Denver W. Fowler. Also being named after its discoverer, it was given the name Daspletosaurus wilsoni. Ever since its description, it remains to this day as the most controversial species of the genus, as it was originally suggested to be a transitional species between D. turosus and dehornery, showing that each species evolved as a result of anagenesis, a phenomenon where multiple species trace direct succession in evolution from the previous species to evolve in time. However, some authors have rejected this hypothesis, and some even propose that D. wilsoni was a junior synonym to D. turosus. Paleontologists like Charlie Roger Scherer, on the other hand, support Warshaw's paper. Despite some of the support of it being valid, its lack of diagnostics is further exacerbated by the description of Pete 3, which shows anatomical characteristics that weaken D. wilsoni as a distinct species. Additionally, paleontologist Jared T. Voris, who described Conculu, has additionally agreed that the characteristics that make both D. wilsoni and D. turosus different are both unconvincing and problematic. 2 years earlier, before the description of this controversial species, a new genus of Daspletosaurus like Tyrannosaur was also described in early 2020 by Voris. Known by fragmented cranial elements, Thanatothyristes degrutorum remains the first and only tyrannosaur that's considered very closely related to Daspletosaurus. Its description also led to the naming of the tribe Daspletosaurini, with the specific name honoring its discoverers John and Sandra de Groot, and its generic name coming from the Romanized Greek words Thanatos and Therismos, meaning death harvester or reaper of death. There was a possibility that this genus could potentially be a third, if not fourth, additional species of Daspletosaurus, according to paleontologist Chengyu Yun. While Thanatothyristes is known by its own unique cranial characteristics, Yun, after analyzing the frontal bone of a subadult D. turosus, argues that using the frontal bone features as autapomorphies for some tyrannosaurid taxa are inadequate due to their morphologically broad range, meaning that the autapomorphies and synapomorphies that make Thanatothyristes distinct isn't enough for it to be considered its own genus, and should instead be rendered as another species of Daspletosaurus. However, this identification was based on an error made in a 2003 paper by Philip J. Curry, which was noticed by Voris on his 2021 study of Gorgosaurus ontogeny, further reinforcing the idea of Thanatothyristes being a distinct genus and invalidating Yun's argument. Despite this, it's possible that future discoveries and research for this genus could eventually support the idea of a fourth species once again, and if Thanatothyristes does turn out to be another Daspletosaurus, Daspletosaurini will eventually end up becoming a monogeneric tribe, or even possibly being returned to Tyrannosaurini with its bigger and larger cousin, Tyrannosaurus rex. In conclusion, Daspletosaurus has had a very rich history in paleontology, and the discoveries of so many different specimens and species alike in the past 55 years show paleontologists how rich Tyrannosaurid biodiversity was during the heyday of the ancient continent of Lauramidia. And knowing how many specimens there are of Daspletosaurus, it's not impossible to suggest that more new species could be described in the near future. As with many of its close relatives in the family of tyrant dinosaurs, Daspletosaurus would have shared a similar build to animals such as Tyrannosaurus rex, albeit on a smaller scale while still having some differences that make it unique in its own way. Starting with the similarities, it shares a massive skull filled with impressive and large teeth. These skulls can reach sizes of over 1 meter or 3 feet 3 inches in length. Along with this, Daspletosaurus also had a similar build to other tyrannosaurids, accompanied with an S-shaped neck to support a large head, a long, muscular tail for balance, and a large body with 2 small fingered arms, with the whole thing supported by thick legs that had 4 toes on each foot, though only 3 of which were actually used for balance and propulsion. Despite the familiar build of Daspletosaurus, it still had its fair share of differences that helped it stand out. To start with, while Daspletosaurus did have small arms compared to other large theropods of its size, as with the rest of its family, it actually did have the longest arms of any Tyrannosaurid in terms of arm to body size ratio. We also have a fairly decent image of Daspletosaurus' physical appearance as well. Based upon a comparison of the teeth wear between it and other extinct animals in 2023, it is concluded that Daspletosaurus, much like other members of its family, would have had its teeth covered by lips in life, similar to modern reptiles like lizards and the tuatara, and unlike extinct and modern-day crocodilians, which they are more closely related to. Notably, a skin impression from D. turosis was also described back in 2017, showing that these dinosaurs would have had small polygonal scales that measured around 3 millimeters in diameter, though their exact placement is up for speculation. Additionally, as for the species and the genus, they can be identified based on unique traits of their skulls, and it's because of these features and the similarities to each other that supports the anagenesis hypothesis that still remains as a topic of debate. The key traits in their skull that sets them apart, along with how each species potentially evolved from each other, can be seen with the shrinking of the lacrimals, a straighter skull roof, the fenestrae cavities shrinking, and an overall difference in the size of the premaxilla, maxilla, and mandibles, along with other key features. In regards to size, while Daspletosaurus was nowhere near as large as the largest tyrannosaurids, it was still most definitely a massive predator. All 3 species would have been roughly the same size, with all reaching estimates of 8.5 to 9 meters or 28 to 30 feet in length, with an accompanied hip height of around 2.2 meters or 7.5 feet, with weight estimates also coming in at around 2 to 3 metric tons. However, based upon the 2025 Daspletosaurus specimen Pete 3, it is believed that they could have even exceeded to larger sizes beyond 9 meters or 30 feet in length, reaching 9.5 meters or 31.2 feet in total length, making Pete 3 the largest known specimen. Overall, Daspletosaurus was a fairly large predator with a unique set of features that make it stand out even among a family of dinosaurs as noteworthy as its own. But how exactly does it fit into this particular dynasty of dinosaurs, and what is its relationship to the mighty T-Rex? Daspletosaurus, as previously stated, is found to be a member of Tyrannosauridae, a family within the famous Tyrannosaur superfamily that contains T-Rex and its closest relatives. The Tyrannosauroid superfamily first evolved from the Basilosaurosaurs in the Middle Jurassic. Starting out as small, crested and feathered animals like Proceratosaurus and the famous Guanlong, they eventually developed larger sizes by the early Cretaceous. Once the former large apex predators like the Allosaurids and the Carnosaurs went extinct by the dawn of the late Cretaceous, Tyrannosauroids rather quickly developed larger body sizes, filling the vacant niches left behind by their now extinct competitors. It is because of their extinction that Tyrannosaurids eventually evolved at some point in the late Cretaceous. While full-body fossils of this family tree appear in the fossil record as early as the beginning of the Campanian stage, it's possible that other earlier Tyrannosaurids did exist in the Canatian and Santonian stages, but no full-body fossils exist due to preservation bias. The only Tyrannosaurs that are known in the fossil record from these stages are outside of Tyrannosauridae. Daspletosaurus specifically resides in the aptly named Daspletosaurinae tribe, which is within the Tyrannosaurinae subclade. Alongside Daspletosaurinae are 3 other different tribes, which include the also fairly new Teratophoniinae tribe, along with Alioraminae and Tyrannosaurinae. Teratophoniinae, which is geologically the oldest tribe, contains the earlier members like the fanged Lithorax and the agile Teratophonius itself. Alioraminae, which is the most debatable tribe when it comes to taxonomic placement, contains its namesake, Alioramus, and the larger Chianzausaurus. Tyrannosaurinae, as the name suggests, contains Tyrannosaurus rex and its closest relatives like the Asian Tarbosaurus and Zhucheng tyrannus. Daspletosaurinae, depending on the synonymy of the aforementioned Thanatothyristes, is a potentially monogeneric tribe that contains Daspletosaurus itself and Thanatothyristes if it is not a 4th species of Daspletosaurus. Daspletosaurus was initially placed as a member number of Tyrannosaurini, but the discovery of Thanatothoristes is what led to the naming of this tribe, not to mention the drastic difference in cranial and postcranial anatomy. In fact, Daspletosaurinae along with Teratophoniinae are among two of the oldest tribes nested within Tyrannosaurinae, as both tribes first appeared as early as 80 million years ago, so the age gap between Daspletosaurines and Tyrannosaurines is also why Daspletosaurus is now no longer considered to be that close to T-Rex as had previously been thought. All in all, Daspletosaurus has a pretty interesting placement in the phylogenetic tree of the tyrant dinosaurs. Hopefully one day we shall see the tribe that it resides in include more new genera in the near future, much like the closely related Thanatothoristes. Daspletosaurus is a geographically well understood tyrannosaurid, with all species and other unnamed specimens having been found in Campanian-aged rocks across the American West. Daspletosaurus turosus resided in what is now the Old Man and Dinosaur Park formations in southeast Alberta. D. horneri has also been found in two different formations, the aforementioned Dinosaur Park and Two Medicine formations in Alberta and the state of Montana, and D. wilsoni has also been found in Montana, residing in the Judith River Formation. Other unnamed specimens and referred material has also been found in the Mesa Verde Formation in the state of Wyoming, along with the Ojo Alamo Formation in New Mexico. Considering the geologic dating of the latter formation, it's unlikely that the referred material from Ojo Alamo belongs to Daspletosaurus. Additionally, if its close relative Thanatothoristes is found to be another species of Daspletosaurus, it would be the oldest species, as it lived in what is now the foremost formation of southern Alberta between 80 and 79 million years ago. In contrast, the oldest definitive species of Daspletosaurus, that being D. turosus, appeared 77 million years ago. All of these different species existed during a time when the North American continent was split into two separate continents by a massive shallow sea called the Western Interior Seaway. The continent that Daspletosaurus thrived in was the western continent of Laramidia, a massive strip of land that stretched as far south as Mexico and as far north as Alaska. The climate for Daspletosaurus during this time was humid. Most, if not all, Daspletosaurus remains have been deposited in lowland habitat like fluvial channels, floodplains, and wetlands, with the formations they resided in even depositing in semi-arid and near coastal habitats. This taxon likely experienced volcanic activity that would have occurred westward in relation to its habitats, events which would have periodically blanketed these environments in ash, but these events would have aided with future plant growth and eventually radiometric dating. Some of the plants found across the different formations that are contemporaries of Daspletosaurus were the modern redwood sequoia, including other large conifer trees, cycads, ginkgo trees, and a large array of ferns. As for fauna, Daspletosaurus preyed on a wide variety of animals, as they were the apex predators of their local environments. The most common prey items consisted of large hadrosaurs and ceratopsids, like the tube-crested Parasaurolophus or the spiny Styracosaurus, the hornless Ecolosaurus, the famous mother dinosaur Maiasaura, and many other different genera that all three species preyed on. Other smaller prey items Daspletosaurus may have hunted were the local crocodilians like Brachychampsa and Lydiosuchus, various ankylosaurs like Edmontonia, Scolosaurus, and Zool, and many other small dinosaurs like the Pachycephalosaurids, Foraminocephali, and the newly named Brontotholus, the Leptoceratopsids, Praenoceratops, and the humorously named Gremlin, the Dromaeosaurids, Sauronotholestes, and Bambiraptor, along with many other dinosaurs and other small prehistoric animals that called these predators' territories home, like Orodromius, Struthiomimus, Tyristenos, Troodon, Montana's Darko, and many more. While Daspletosaurus did have a wide array of prey to choose from, this genus did have a rough life. As hunters, they would have had to been weary of the prey they chose to hunt. The different horns and bosses of the many ceratopsians, along with the armored tails of ankylosaurs and other armored prey, could easily result in injuries that would lead to death. And additionally, unlike larger tyrannosaurs like T-Rex, which were virtually uncontested, these tyrants did have sizable competition to worry about as well. While adult Daspletosaurus would have seen dromaeosaurs as potential prey, they did have to compete against them for food when young, and the same would go for the aforementioned crocodilians. As adults, though, Daspletosaurus had more interesting competition. At the height of the Campanian stage, many different tyrannosaurid species lived across Laramidia, but most of them remained separated into their own different ecosystems due in part to the mountain change and large waterways. Natural boundaries kept most of these tyrannosaurids in their respective regions. However, every species of Daspletosaurus did compete with one other tyrannosaurid they crossed paths with. that being the aforementioned Gorgosaurus. While both predators did evolve to fill similar ecological roles, their feeding mechanics, along with geographic range, is what sets them apart. While Daspletosaurus was a more common predator to lower latitude regions, Gorgosaurus is more commonly found at higher latitudes, so it's possible that while their ecosystems overlapped, confrontations between both species may have been rare, brief, but also intense, as they may have fought each other for the same food sources. Another competitor to Daspletosaurus was the giant crocodilian Deinosuchus, a 12-meter long adaptable predator that has a fossil record of eating dinosaurs too. Not only was it a competitor, but it may have seen Daspletosaurus as a prey item as well. Lastly, another competitor to Daspletosaurus would have been its own kind. Much like other tyrannosaurs, Daspletosaurus would also have fought its own kind for food, but unlike T-Rex, it was more likely than not to have been a social predator, a behavior that is still speculative in the king of the dinosaurs. One bone bed from 2 Medicine preserves 3 Daspletosaurus individuals that died around the same time, one adult, one juvenile, and another of indeterminate size. Some evidence behind their deposition supports that they all died at the same time, and could be substantial evidence for pack hunting in this genus. But other authors are skeptical about its potential gregarious behavior. The social behavior of Daspletosaurus, according to paleontologists Brian Roach and Daniel Brinkman, have postulated that their interactions may have been similar to Komodo dragons, where solitary individuals mob the carcasses of dead animals while going as far as cannibalizing each other in the process. In 2015, evidence of Daspletosaurus cannibalism was published by paleontologists David Hone and Darren H. Tank. Post-mortem damage to a mandible was found on a juvenile specimen, TMP 1994.143.0001, discovered in the Dinosaur Park Formation. However, this specimen was later found to be the remains of a young Gorgosaurus in 2019. While it is no longer considered to be a Daspletosaurus, this is still evidence that shows that other tyrannosaurids aside from T-Rex did engage in cannibalism. Overall, the fossil record of the life history, ecosystems, and ecology of Daspletosaurus is absolutely rich, giving us a great understanding into how this frightful predator lived, fought, and died. Daspletosaurus has occupied its fair share of appearances in paleomedia since its discovery, primarily in the form of TV shows and documentaries, though with still a few video game appearances. Starting with its debut in the pop cultural landscape, it would be shown in a segment as a mounted skeleton with Dale Russell in the very long and currently running 1960s BBC series Horizon, specifically in the episode Hot-Blooded Dinosaurs in 1976, just 6 years after its official description. Following Horizon, it wouldn't make another appearance on screen for nearly 2 decades, up until reused footage of the Tyrannosaurus Rex in 1984's Prehistoric Beast was shown in the 1994 TV special titled Messages in Stone, where it was relabeled as Daspletosaurus. After almost another decade, Daspletosaurus would make its first dedicated spotlight appearance accompanied with a CGI model in the 2003 4-part documentary series titled Dinosaur Planet in the episode Little Das's Hunt. In Little Das's Hunt, the story follows the hunting journey of the titular character as he follows his family on a long quest for food. However, he frequently causes them to lose their potential kills, and once they finally track down a young Maiasaur they injured in their first hunt, they unfortunately get caught up in a violent volcanic eruption and the family ultimately loses their lives. 4 years later, in 2007, Daspletosaurus made its debut into the Dinosaur King franchise as a fire-attributed creature in not just the video games, but also in the anime in the episode Dance Evolution, Carnival of Chaos, and the Final Dinosaur War. The following year, Secrets of the Dinosaur Mummy would also feature this dinosaur with a slightly antagonistic role in the documentary dedicated to the life and death of Leo, a mummified specimen of Brachioelophosaurus. In 2009, Daspletosaurus was also featured in its own short by the children's web series I'm a Dinosaur. In 2010, it made 2 prominent appearances within paleomedia, the first of which being the 2-parter Discovery documentary Prehistoric Assassins, in the second half Claws and Jaws, where it is seen hunting down a Corythosaurus. Additionally, the documentary incorrectly states how the forearms of Daspletosaurus are nearly completely devoid of any muscle or strength, whereas in reality, Daspletosaurus has the longest arms in proportion to its body size of any Tyrannosaurian. In December of the same year, it would debut into the popular 2009 children's show Dinosaur Train in the episode Great Big Stomping Dinosaur Feet, with the two characters Daphne and her father, Mr. Daspletosaurus. From here, it would be a commonly shown background character within the series. After Prehistoric Assassins and Dinosaur Train, 2011 finds it in the BBC docuseries Planet Dinosaur in the episode Last Killers, where a Daspletosaurus pack is depicted hunting down Chasmosaurus and Centrosaurus in two segments within the episode. 4 years later, NHK's Leaps in Evolution showcases Daspletosaurus in the episode And Finally, Intelligence. It would also appear in 2018's Deadly Dinosaurs. Daspletosaurus' latest appearance in any TV show or documentary was in 2021, where an individual watches a territorial dispute between two styracosaurs in the web series Dinosauria in the episode Old Buck. After the titular character stabs the younger opposing styracosaurus, the same individual Daspletosaurus is then accompanied by two others and are then inferred to go down for the wounded dinosaur before the episode ends. Additionally, while it has yet to release, it is expected to appear more prominently in Dinosauria Volume 3. Transitioning to video games, Daspletosaurus' appearances are rather sparse by comparison, where it has only made 3 notable appearances, the first of which being the aforementioned Dinosaur King games as of 2007. In 2008, it would make its debut into the Fossil Fighters franchise as the Earth-type Vivosaur Daspleto, later returning in the sequel game Fossil Fighters Champions in 2010. Daspletosaurus' latest appearance of any kind would be in the 2022 open-world survival game Path of Titans, with numerous different skin variants. Additionally, this animal was also supposed to appear in the 2011 docuseries Dinosaur Revolution, in a segment where it is depicted alongside Stegosaurus and Styracosaurus, presumably hunting them. However, this concept was unfortunately cut from the final production. Overall, Daspletosaurus has had its fair share of paleo media coverage since its discovery. While it has had nowhere near as big of a spotlight as its relative, Tyrannosaurus rex, hopefully in due time we will find it making more appearances in pop culture as time goes on. Daspletosaurus was a truly remarkable animal. Living from 77 to roughly 74 million years ago, it would have filled a niche of apex predator that would, before long, be occupied by the king of the dinosaurs, Tyrannosaurus rex. However, much like all other non-avian dinosaurs, it too would face the inevitable demise of extinction. The last species of this dinosaur, Daspletosaurus horneri, disappeared from the fossil record 74.4 million years ago, ending a 3 to potentially 6 million year time range when considering the possibility that Thanatothoristes could potentially be the oldest Daspletosaurus species. The ultimate cause for their demise is still unclear to most paleontologists, but multiple factors have been proposed. During the Campanian stage, the sea levels of the western interior seaway were receding, but it's possible that the formation of what would one day become the Rocky Mountains in western Lorimidia cut off several channels that used to flow through this region and flooded the lowlands with water and sediment enough to where it caused a brief re-expansion of the seaway that completely destroyed its local habitats by 73 million years ago. This eventually birthed what would one day become the Bear Paw Formation. Additionally, the formation of the Rocky Mountains may have also triggered major volcanic activity which could have killed many of the local inhabitants of the region, including Daspletosaurus. Another factor that may have contributed to the extinction was a potential change to the fauna. Daspletosaurus was one of many tyrannosaurids to disappear by the middle to the near end of the Campanian stage. Alongside it, Gorgosaurus, Teratophonius, and various other tyrannosaurids that inhabited different regions across Lorimidia coincidentally went extinct around the same time. It's possible that a change in prey items was something they couldn't adapt to, and in their place came different tyrannosaurids more suited to hunting the newer prey items. Though of course, this is mostly speculation at this point. By the time these tyrannosaurids went extinct, they were eventually replaced by newer genera. As the seaway began to recede once more, Albertosaurus, a relative of Gorgosaurus, and the non-tyrannosaurid tyrannosaurs of the eastern continent Appalachia, that would eventually lead to the rise of Dryptosaurus and even Nanotyrannus, began to cross the now receded ocean and spread west to where Lorimidia once resided. And, eventually replacing Albertosaurus, a new tribe of tyrannosaurs from Asia crossed into North America and birthed the most advanced, powerful, and famous member of its family tree, Tyrannosaurus rex itself. With North America no longer split apart, these predators continued to rule over the United Continent until the KPG extinction event that killed the non-avian dinosaurs 66 million years ago, marking the end of a successful and adaptable evolutionary lineage that survived for 100 million years. So although Daspletosaurus and its kind may be gone forever, the bones and other remains they've left behind give paleontologists amazing insight into how these incredible animals lived their lives. Their lives give us a glimpse into the ancient past that paleontologists have been searching for the past 200 years. And it is safe to say that what we do know is that Daspletosaurus was an incredibly fascinating animal. From its discovery as just another specimen of Gorgosaurus, to today, with possibly up to 3 or even more species to call its own, Daspletosaurus has had an incredibly rich history. A history filled with discovery and intrigue surrounding this most interesting Tyrannosaur. A history that tells the story of Daspletosaurus, the Tyrant Before T-Rex.
As it stands now, Carnotaurus is one of the most unique dinosaurs ever discovered, despite being known from only a single specimen. This is due in part to its iconic horns, but also partially due to its size, as Carnotaurus was one of the largest members of its entire family.
As the pyramids of Egypt were being constructed during the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom, mammoths were clashing their tusks together in the high Arctic.
This frozen wasteland is one of the harshest environments in the entire world, and yet, here too, life finds a way.
Almost 100 million years ago, in what would one day become Argentina, the land was ruled by giants that hunted titans.
And even though many or large animals may have taken their place as giants of their own, life on land will never again reach the heights of Dreadnoughtus, the colossus that fear nothing.
Steve gave us all a new perspective on animals that we once used to consider as evil, vile, and horrible monsters, but instead as animals that have been misunderstood for so many years by so many people. And it is thanks to people like Steve Irwin that these animals have begun to receive the respect and protection that they always deserved.